thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. Download the app today.
This is Up for a Chat with your hosts, Cindy O'Meara and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And I'm Kim Morrison. What a treat this week. We have an incredible guest with us, someone who we're really excited to dive deep with. Dalla Camina is the founder of Women Rising and is an award-winning presenter and best-selling author. This amazing soul is passionate about how women can succeed personally and professionally. Now, this incredible soul has got 2 decades of corporate leadership. She's also been on her own personal journey around navigating male-dominated arenas, battling burnout and seeking authenticity, which is what has sparked her to create the amazing leadership programs that she has. Welcome to the show, beautiful Megan.
Hello, beautiful women. I'm so happy to be here. What a beautiful energy to start with.
Well, we are very excited and a bit blown away by all the incredible things that you are doing and what you're achieving and how you're actually imprinting and making a mark in this incredible arena. Before we dive into everything that you are doing today, how on earth did you get into this? Where are you from? What took you down this journey into the corporate leadership world?
Oh, gosh. It's so interesting, right? Because when I was growing up and, the dreams that we have for our lives, I never thought that this was never the dream. I grew up as an actress. I was a dancer. I spent until I was really 23, that was what I was going to be doing. And I was always on the stage and, acting and doing all of those things. Went to performing arts school. After high school, was a complete rebel, never wanted to go to uni, never wanted to work for anybody. And then a whole lot of things happened in my early 20s. I got chronic fatigue long before they knew what chronic fatigue was. I was in bed for 6 months, really, really ill. Then I had a car accident and really hurt my back. And like all of these events, when you look back and you pull the string, you see, oh, okay, I see. And at 24, I ended up at GE in a part-time admin role, General Electric Company, back in the day under Jack Welch. And I fell in love with marketing. Again, something I never thought that I would end up doing. And that was the start of my 18-year corporate career. Working in marketing. I spent a lot of time in Asia, traveling the world, worked for GE, then PwC, then through acquisition ended up at IBM, one of the world's biggest tech companies. It was there that I, hit 30, got pregnant, got divorced, and got promoted. And all of these things sort of happened in like a 2-year time frame, and ended up in the biggest job of my career as director of marketing at IBM, multi-billion-dollar company, thousands of people. And a couple of years into that journey, I completely burnt myself out. Completely. Gave up my job, renegotiated a part-time executive role. I was doing my first master's degree at the time, single mum, Luca was 5. And that really changed the trajectory of my life, of my career. I started to go deep into the science and practice of how do you be well? How do you actually be well as a woman? How do you live your purpose and be well while doing it and not burn yourself out? And that was then the trajectory of the last 15, almost 20 years of my work. So that's the short version. We can drill into any of that. But yeah, that then set me on a path to writing my book, doing more work around women's coaching, women's leadership development, authenticity, and into the business that I now run, which I've been in for a decade.
So one of the things that has really made me think quite a lot lately is everyone's talking about leadership, but not everybody can be a leader. Some have to be followers. Would you agree with me on that, number one? And number two, what is leadership for across the board? Like I'm hearing it everywhere in business coaches. I'm hearing it like from you. I'm hearing it in like people that are doing meditations and breath work. And so what is leadership? Not everybody can be a leader. So how do you pick a leader? Would probably be my first question.
That's such an interesting question. I think we're all leaders, and I think we're all followers. And I think we all have the capacity for leadership. And I really look at two sides of the leadership equation. A lot of the work, most of the work that I do with women is around self-leadership. It's around how do we lead ourselves and become fully empowered ourselves, irrespective of what's going on around us. And then there's, yes, the leadership paradigm and how we change leadership to be more inclusive and authentic and certainly conducive for women. Because for so long as women, when we look at leadership, like in a work sense, women have been taught and socialized to fit the mold, to fit the masculine mold, the male mold. So I think we all have the capacity to lead. I think it's really important that we, particularly as women, learn to lead ourselves. And then, yes, of course, we're all followers, right? We all follow, different leaders. We follow different thought leaders, whether it's not a leader in the traditional sense as well.
I love that answer. That is just absolutely brilliant. I was flicking through Instagram and I came across a sponsored ad that was called "The Most Interesting Women in the Room." And I thought it caught my eye. And what was interesting is that in week 1, they talk about how to talk to anyone, make your bed, the 5 a.m. club, the power of habit. So, and then it's the 7 habits, 13 things mentally, and it goes on and on. But it's just the 80-20 principle. But it really got me thinking because it's scary how many people don't know how to talk to somebody or don't make their bed in the morning or are not the 5 a.m. club. And I have to tell you that Kim and I, we can talk to anyone. We've been doing this 10 years. We've learnt very well to do it. We both make our bed. You go to her place before 5 a.m. and her bed's made. And we're our 5 a.m. club. So how do some women know how to do this? And you kind of look at it, you're going, yeah, I'm doing all that. The power of habit. I wrote a book called Changing Habits, Changing Lives. Kim has her habits. So how do some women already know this and other women you've got to teach?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. I don't make my bed, by the way. So for anyone out there who doesn't make their bed in the morning, sometimes I like throw the cover up. But yes, I'm not a bed maker. I am an early riser, though. Look, I think when we're looking at women, like I coach thousands of women every year, literally in the programs that I run, and talk to thousands more in our communities. A lot of women are struggling just to get by. Like, let's be, real and honest about it. So when we look at some women are good at, having habits and being up at 5 and making their bed in the morning, and other women have to be taught in your words. A lot of women are struggling. We did research last year for Women Rising, and only 8% of women said they're thriving at work. 8% of women. We're seeing epidemic levels of burnout amongst professional women. It's even worse. And by professional women, working women, even worse since the pandemic. We didn't think it could get worse in terms of burnout. So the conversations I have with women and the work that I'm doing with women I'm all about the philosophy of like, what's the smallest thing that you can do? What's the one habit that you can create that's going to make the biggest impact? Is it getting more sleep? Is it doing a 5-minute meditation practice? Is it standing outside in the sun on the pavement like I do a lot at lunchtime and just getting, sunshine for 5 minutes in that moment of peace? Like, what is it? And how do we shrink the change and shrink the impact? Because I also think that for a lot of women, particularly, we think we've got to do all of the things. And we don't have to do, and we can't do all of the things. So how do we make it small and tangible? And that could be getting up at 5 a.m. The one thing could be, I'm going to make my bed this morning. I'm going to feel like I've got some control and order in my life. Or it could be something completely different. But mostly I think women just need to be easier on themselves and more gentle with themselves and give themselves more of a break and more support.
And it probably is what you said. People are, or women do everything. They go to work, they look after the house, they look after the kids. Like I hate to say it, but the men just don't tidy. Although your husband's pretty good, Kim, but they just don't clean up and tidy up and put. Like I'm a very ordered human being, and I have to have order where my sheets are, so I know where my queens and my kings and my doubles or whatever they are. And I just find that they just don't think of things like that. Why is that? So you're the one that is basically organizing the house, organizing the food, and that's not everybody, but I just find a lot of women, and then they go to work, and then they pick up the kids, and then they look after the kids, and
yeah, women do all of the things.
Yeah.
And even when men do things, and there's great men out there who, do a lot in the home and do a lot with the kids, women still do all of the things, and, we see that in all of the data. Talk to any of your girlfriends. I'm sure it's the same. I hear it from women constantly. And a lot of women also, even women who are in marriages and partnerships, still do the lion's share, even when they're both working outside of the home. Still do the lion's share of the work. So yeah, it is. I never want to, in all the work that I do, I never want to add another burden. Sometimes we feel, especially with, social media and all the perfection out there, the very last thing I want women to feel is that there's something else to live up to, that there's something else they need to layer on, to be enough. I'm always trying to shrink it, make it smaller. Yeah, because women have enough to deal with.
But I don't know how we can change that. I know you're saying shrink it down, but there's got to be food on the table. You got to pick the kids up. I have grandbabies now, and I seem to spend a lot of time with my grandbabies, helping my children, with their babies. And I still work full time kind of. I can, because I work for myself, I can decide what times I work, but I still got to put the hours in my company. So I don't know how you shrink it down.
No, when I was saying shrink it down, I was referring to the 5 a.m. club and all of the habits and doing all of the things for yourself to take care of yourself. What I meant was, how do you lower the bar for yourself so that you are taking care of yourself? But you can sit for 5 minutes of meditation. You don't need to sit for an hour. You can go for a 10-minute walk. You don't need to run a marathon. How do you shrink the things that you're doing to support yourself? Because you have to fit them in between all of those things that you're talking about that women do, because women do, as we said, all the things.
And we go back to what you said at the beginning. This is, women having to fit into a male model in the corporate world. There is a masculine and a feminine energy. And there's a woman that Cindy and I have known and have seen as a therapist for many, many years. Sadly, she's no longer on this planet. But I'm beginning to be really curious as to your thoughts around what she says. She thinks women are their own worst enemies. And now this woman was 90, 95, 92 when she passed away. But she said that her beliefs were that women shouldn't be on the front line. Women are constantly trying to run corporations, trying to be out the front and do all these things. They expect their men to be doing it as well as changing nappies and vacuuming the floor. She feels that women are their own worst enemy because men feel so discombobulated and misplaced as to their role in society because us women are wanting it all. What's your thoughts around that?
Wow. I think women should do and be and have and act however they choose to. And I think if a woman wants to go and be a CEO of a company, power to her. If a woman wants to stay home with the kids, power to her. And that we should stop defining and confining what the patriarchy has told women, that where they can fit and what they can do and how they should act and how they should lead and how they should parent, what they should look like. So that's one side of what I just heard you ask. The other side of it is, yes, there are feminine and masculine energies in all of us, irrespective of what your gender is. We all have feminine and masculine traits and energies. Do I believe that men and masculinity is challenged in the current paradigm because of the rising of women? I absolutely do. And I think it is one of the greatest challenges of our time in terms of how women can step into their power and how we can help, support, educate, empower men to live in that new paradigm with empowered women. And that's one of our greatest challenges. So for me, it's not about women have a place, and that place is not leading organizations or governments or whatever it is, movements. It's women being able to do whatever they want. And ideally, the ideal scenario is that we can do it in harmony together, that men are embracing their feminine and their masculine, women are embracing their feminine and masculine, all genders, and that we are together redefining what this looks like. Because what it has been in the past is very divisive. And I do a lot of work with men around male allyship. And we see in the data that the vast majority of men want to be part of the change and want to be part of the solution. But we know, of course, not all men, right? So yeah, happy to go anywhere you want to go with that. But like, I think it's an and. Yeah, I think it's an and.
It's interesting because we're evolutionary creatures and we've evolved as hunter-gatherers, where the man has gone out and hunted and the woman has stayed near the fires and gathered and looked after the children. So I find it, I find that the older, and I may be generalizing here, but I find that the old gentleman, so my husband is in his 70s, so he's been brought up in that patriarchal society, and he's still got those tendencies. Whereas my son, who is, and his son, who's in his 30s, I watch him and I see a very different male role model there with his wife. But what I do see with his wife is a very mothering, looking after. She loves looking after my son. She's not that, she loves to work, but she'd rather look after her son and my son as opposed to be that corporate woman. It's interesting. It's like, whereas I'm the woman who wants to get out there and change the world and do everything like that, I've got a husband that's very patriarchal. And then down the next generation, which I think the millenniums, which is the baby boomers kids, it's very different. It's really different. So I am seeing a shift. I'm seeing a shift not only in the men, but in the women. Like, I'm a baby boomer. You're just below the baby boomer. So's Kim.
Gen X,
so you're ahead. The next generation after the baby boomer. And I think we were women that were out to empower and change.
Yeah.
And so I'm really seeing these shifts in the generations. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's funny because I see yes to everything that you just said. And I think it's so nuanced within the generations as well, right? Just like it was in like Gen X. And we learned from the baby boomers and we watched the women and breaking all the barriers and burning the bras and doing all of the things. And Gen X, we can do everything. We can have it all. We can, be superwoman. That was our, I guess, burden in some ways, but also our liberation as Gen X women. And I think, some of the women coming up below us, particularly Gen Ys, looked at Gen X's and went, you are all nuts. Like, you're crazy for trying to do all of those things. So I just think it's so nuanced, but I do think that the women coming through today, the younger generations, have this different sense of feminine power, and that it's a beautiful thing to be at home and nurture and, be in the feminine, and that you can also be in your masculine. And I think this is one of the greatest gifts that we can teach women is it's both. You know, you don't just have to go out there and power on in a masculine way to be successful. You can do that in your own authentic way, whether that's masculine, feminine, or ideally you've got, you know, a beautiful blend of both of those things. I see that in my son. You know, I really see that. He's a very masculine guy. You know, he's 6'2", he's got tattoos, he's got a beard, you know, he's very masculine looking, he's very in touch with his feminine, you know. So I think that's a very powerful shift.
Do you think that's to do with the fact, though, that you were a single mum, that you had to provide and be both showing the masculine and the feminine energy? You were the driver as well as the nurturer and all of those things. Like, I've noticed many sons of single mothers do have an incredible approach to understanding both masculinity and femininity. Is that a plus in your mind, or is there an importance for more male role models? How do you see it playing out?
Look, I do think we are a product of our environment. So I think, yes, he is a product, but he's very close to his dad as well. He's got a, you know, close-knit family around him. I look at his friends and his peer group, and they are similar. And they have very different home backgrounds. And, you know, I think like attracts like. So he's surrounded himself with people who are also in touch with their feminine, you know, in terms of, you know, these gorgeous young men. So I think it's all of the things. Yeah, definitely he's a product of his upbringing, but I think there's I do think that there is this shift coming with some of these younger men coming through, which I think is, I feel so hopeful and optimistic about the future of the world when I look at them.
A couple of weekends ago, I was at a conference and they were talking about all the different pre-boomers, the boomers. And I find this really interesting because it said the pre-boomers were World War II, frugal and resilient. The boomers were hierarchical and lived to work. Gen X is the forgotten generation. They work to live. The Gen Ys, which is the boomers' kids, work for purpose and are procrastinators. The Gen Zs are politicized, global, and with a global mindset, which is interesting. And then the alphas are the babies. There's a new one coming through, Gen Alpha, and they're our babies. And so it does show that difference, and it does show that the boomers' babies versus the Gen X babies, which are the Gen Zs usually, how these kids are completely different. But the question I guess I want to ask you, I just remembered this demographer talking about it. He was amazing to listen to. But the question I want to ask you, okay, I'm burnt out. I've come to you. I'm not handling anything. I'm emotional. The house is in a wreck. My business life, like everything is going mad. How do you help? What do you do to help a person like me? Where do you start? What's the first thing that we do? Do we fix the physical, the mental? Do we do timetables, default diaries? What is it that we need to do in order to fix a human being like me? But because you're saying 8% of women are happy, then that means there's a lot of women that are going to be needing you.
Yeah, so the stat was 8% of women are thriving at work. That was the stat.
Okay.
But that covers everything, right? Because we bring ourselves with us wherever we go. So when everything is in a mess and when we're feeling burnt out, I always like to come back to the body first. And how do you calm your nervous system from being in that really fried, frazzled, frantic state, which I know very well because that, you know, I've been that person. I've had that experience more than once in my life, and have a tendency to get to that place in my business, you know, like let's do the things. I have to constantly pull back. So the first place I would always start is the breath. And how do you start to calm things down? Because I find, and it sounds so deceptively simple, But if we try and do the other things, where's the timetable and clean the house and and we're burnt out, we're just going to get more burnt out. So how do we slow it down, calm it down, start to work with some gentle breath exercises, sit in silence for 5 minutes a day. And once we can do that and then look at the fundamentals, how's your sleep? Are you sleeping? How do you get some sleep? Some sleep extension if you're not sleeping, or get better sleep if you are in bed but you're tossing and turning all night. Like, that's one of the absolute fundamentals as well. And then it's just like one thing at a time. I'm always looking when someone is overwhelmed. When I'm overwhelmed, I like to do 3 lists, and one is, like, get everything down. What are the essential things that absolutely have to happen? Like, they're the non-negotiable things that if you don't do them, things are going to completely fall apart. Your boss won't be happy, your kids won't be fed. What are the things? The second list is, what are things that can be delayed or delegated, or, we can just, they can be on a later list. And then the third list is, what can just go altogether? What can we take off the list? And some of these things are the things that we think we should do. Some of these things might be things that we still have on our agenda, but they're, past. We don't need to be doing them anymore, and try and get some clarity. And anywhere we can find simplicity amongst the craziness is a really helpful place to be as well. Yeah.
So when we look at this whole model of the world that we're in right now, one thing that really has interested me lately is, as we've alluded to many times and had a lot of people point out, is that suicide in this country is at an all-time high. They say there's 9 deaths a day. This is so sad. And 7 of them are men, usually in that up to that middle age. What is your thoughts then around why is mental health, or why are our men falling into such a hole that it's kind of like impacting society in such a way that it seems to be they're falling through the cracks, or they're not getting the help, or maybe they don't believe in themselves? You're all about women's empowerment, but what about the men?
So look, I'll just caveat, I'm not an expert in anything related to suicide, and I'm not an expert in men's health. Okay, so let's just be really clear about that. I'm not a psychologist, and I think that's really important to just say, like, this is not my space. With that being said, I do think that there is this challenge that we talked about before, and I don't know if this is a contributor because I'm not an expert in those areas, right? But I do see this shift with women finding a new place and a new sense of power that a lot of men feel challenged and displaced because of that. And that's not new. I don't think that's new. We've seen that since the beginning of the women's movements, all the way through. Every time, and it comes back to balance, right? Every time someone gets a bit more power, someone can feel like they get a bit less power. So again, I don't know if that's a contributing factor, but I would imagine that it is on some level. And I do think men need more support. I absolutely do believe that men need more support. I was walking down the beach, as I do in the mornings where I live, last week, and there was a men's circle. And there was a sign in the sand that said, "All men welcome." And I was just watching them. There was probably about, 12 men in the circle. And, one of them, was sharing. And I wasn't listening, but I was just observing from afar. And then he stepped back, and then there was just silence, and they were just standing. And then someone said, "Oh, Jeff, you're new you don't have to, but did you want to share anything? And he stepped in and started, and I was almost in tears. I think there's such a need for men to have safe spaces, to lower their armor, to be vulnerable, to share that it's challenging being a man in this world, just like it's challenging being a woman in this world. I was so heartened by that. And I think there is more of this happening. I think there are more safe spaces, like there's the men's shed, and, you know, there are these other aspects. We're trying to create it around our Male Allies program to not be like, you're the reason why women aren't successful and we're not seeing a shift in the numbers. Come in, let's make this better for all of us. Yeah, I think there's a massive requirement for that. And, you know, homelessness amongst men, like, you know, all of the things. I get quite emotional about it because I think it is such a shift we need to make in our society, particularly in Australia. I think, like, we have this, you know, this masculine macho culture, and I think it can be really challenging for men to to put that down and to be vulnerable and to ask for help and ask for support. Yeah.
You talk about a vision for women, which we haven't talked about. Like, you talked about the breath, the fundamentals, and for us to have vision and purpose. How do we find vision if we don't know where we are? You know, like, we're so bogged down in everyday life. How do we find that vision, number one, and how do we find that purpose in our life, number two? Because they say if you have purpose, you know, with the what's it called, the blue zones. You know, purpose is a really important part of longevity. Yeah. So, can we talk about vision and purpose?
Yes, one of my favorite topics. When it comes to life vision, here's what I see. You know, we've had 7,500 women in our Women Rising program in the last 3 years, and I would estimate probably 90% of those women don't have a vision for their life. They don't have one. Some of them have never had one. Some of the women had one, you know, or had more of a sense of themselves and what they wanted for their life, and then, you know, life takes over and we, you know, lose ourselves. We lose that vision because we're just in we're on that treadmill, right? That so many of us can relate to. And the toughest question I ask in 4 months of working with women and so much teaching and all the rest of it is, what is it that you want for your life? Number one. And number two, if you followed the joy in your work and in your life, what would you do next? And it stumps us. You know, when we ask that question, like, where's the joy? What could be the joy? What would you do next if joy was the measure of your success? Like, it's such a beautiful question, right? And it just stops women in their tracks.
It's a great question.
It's a great question. I think it's probably the favorite question that I ask in all of the teaching that I do. If you followed the joy, and it's a good one for us to remind ourselves of, right? Like, what would that look like? So the vision piece is carving out some space and some time and some energy to ask, what do I want for myself? Like, what do I want for myself? If I could have anything, if I could put aside my disbelief and my busyness for 10 minutes, and I could ask myself the question, like, if I could do anything tomorrow and I could have joy and whatever it is that I want, like, what would I do? Would I sleep in? Would I get up early? Would I be going to work? Would I be with my kids? Would I be with my girlfriend? Would I be with my partner? Like, what would I do? Would I be doing a PhD? You know, would I never want to look at a book again in my life? Like, what would I do with my time and my energy? What would feel good for me? And we don't get to that all in one go, but we can start asking the questions. We have a free resource called the Possibility Planner, and I'm really happy to share it. We do it at the beginning. I do it for the beginning of every year, but you can do it at any point, and it's just got simple questions to start thinking about. oh, what do I want? Like women, so many women believe they don't have the time, the space, the energy, or the permission to even ask themselves the question. So that's the life vision piece. And then we just build it bit by bit, right? We're like, I'm going to pull in one thing here and one thing here. We don't have to overhaul our whole lives. And then the piece around purpose, often we think that we get struck by our purpose, like we're going to wake up one day and, God's going to boom down and tell, this is what you're meant to be doing, Cindy. What the science tells us that it very rarely happens like that, right? We build our purpose. We don't find our purpose. And the analogy that I always use is follow the breadcrumbs. And the breadcrumbs are like, what's interesting to you right now? What's exciting to you right now? What are you curious about right now? And if you could pick up one breadcrumb on that path, what would it be? And then what would the next breadcrumb and the next breadcrumb be? That's how I changed my entire career trajectory, was just picking up a breadcrumb after my burnout, and the next one and the next one and the next one. So that leads us in the direction of our purpose. When we follow that curiosity, we follow that energy and excitement that we have, and trust that path rather than having to figure it all out in our heads.
My grandmother always said, if you don't know what your purpose is, serve until you do find it.
Love that.
And I think it was such a beautiful, profound statement that, when you're not sure, then do things that spark joy, or that you love to support others, or how can you serve another human being? And it's through the act of service we actually discover our true purpose for that moment. And our purpose can change and it evolves and all of those things. Another thing that I think that where Cindy and I feel very blessed and grateful is women seem to be, and again, a general statement, we're talkers. As we age and go through the process, and again, this is a generalized statement, it seems to be younger women are finding their strengths, their purpose, their vision, their self-belief, their self-worth, and all of those things, whilst men seem to be wrapping their chests in their young age and think that they're Tarzan and they can conquer and be and do and have it all. Then there seems to be this cross, maybe through our 30s, maybe it's when the babies are here and the careers and the disconnect or disassociation to what that all looked like in our youth. And where that seems to change, again, generally speaking, women will have their catch-ups, they communicate, they talk about it, whereas men, generally speaking, apart from these beautiful men's groups that are arising, have withdrawn and are not talking about it. What in your research have you seen, or am I on the wrong track, but is there something that you see as the shift where women evolve and, again, men seem to, I don't know, they seem to lose themselves through those mid-30s and into their 40s, 50s and beyond, and where we'd call it a midlife awakening, perhaps they buy a Harley and call it a midlife crisis. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I don't know either from the men's perspective, again, because, I'm not a deep expert in men's journeys as the work that I do in women's journeys, but that is the stereotype, right? Like men go through into their 40s and their 50s and beyond, they have the midlife crisis. Men finish work, when they retire, they have heart attacks, or they die. Like we see this massive phenomenon, right? Men would retire. I was so worried when my dad retired, because men would stop, they lose that sense of purpose, and then they start to decline. Blissfully, it wasn't the case for my dad, but with women, one of the things I get most excited about with women and women's journeys, and this is coming into the research that I'm starting, is around what happens for midlife in their heroine's journey as they go through this midlife transition. And that can be mid-30s, right? Like, I think officially midlife is 38 for women. I have women in their mid-30s. I know, right?
We're way past that. I thought I was midlife now.
Way past that. I feel like I'm 54. I feel like I'm just hitting midlife. But I have women in their, mid to late 30s saying, oh, can you please teach us more about midlife? And So I get very excited about this phase of our lives and going against what the patriarchy tells us, which is you're used by date, you're done. And instead, these are our wisdom years. These are the years that we really can come into our power and own our strength and own everything about ourselves and chart our own course. And that midlife awakening that you mention, rather than that midlife crisis. I do know, though, that a lot of women get past 40 and they start to feel invisible and like it's too late for them to do anything with their lives, their careers, their goals, their dreams, and that they're kind of just, out to pasture. And that is one paradigm that I'm really excited to work within to shift that. Because, I'm 54.
And you're doing a PhD.
And I'm starting a PhD, at 54, right? I started my business at 42. This whole theme around once you're over 40, you're done. I think once you hit 40, you're just getting started as a woman. And I'm so excited about that and that shift that we can make for women as a generation of women and the generations coming up, that these are the power years. This is let's go, right? Let's go. 54, starting my PhD. I started my PhD. I did 2 master's degrees and then started my PhD when I was 40, about 43. And I quit because I wanted to write more books and it was the wrong PhD at the wrong time. And now it's the thing I'm most excited about. And I'm 54. Who cares, right? Who cares how old you are? Go do it. Go do the thing.
Can you tell us what your PhD is? Because when I hear of people that do PhDs and studying a particular amino acid that occurs through metabolism, it blows me away. So what is your PhD?
My PhD is in women's spirituality and leadership.
Oh.
Yeah.
I want to read it. I love theses.
And my research topic that we'll see where I end up when I finished all my coursework and start my dissertation is around the midlife heroine's journey and what that means for womanhood, leadership, and our lives.
Is your idea of the heroine's journey similar to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, where we do set out on an adventure? We get challenges, we find mentors, we seek the treasures, we come back with a new involvement, understanding, and then only to set out on another adventure again. And for our listener, if you're interested in knowing what that is, just Google Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, and you'll see a 5 or 6 minute cartoon video explaining this. But is it the same?
No. So the heroine's journey was actually, it's not my concept. The heroine's journey is a concept from Maureen Murdoch, who was a student of Joseph Campbell's, student/peer. And when he was back in the 80s, when he was before that, she had a conversation with him and said, but the journey is different for women. Mm. This journey of the hero's journey was all about out there and conquer and it's not the same for women. Women have a different journey. And she coined the term and crafted the methodology around the heroine's journey. So if anyone interested in that, brilliant, fascinating. She is a psychiatrist, Jungian therapist. Her work is phenomenal. And she wrote a book called The Heroine's Journey. And then there's been lots of other people who've built since, built on those models. But because my work is based around women, I don't look at the hero's journey. I look at the heroine's journey and what is our unique journey. Part of that heroine's journey is the separation from the mother and the separation from the feminine, which I see so deeply in women's journeys. We push, historically at least, we push aside that feminine because the patriarchy says there's no use for that here. So get into your masculine self, power yourself up, fit that mold, and then you'll be successful. And part of the woman's journey and the heroine's journey is that reclaiming the feminine and that bringing the feminine back together with the masculine so that we can be whole and authentic. So it's brilliant. Maureen Murdoch, brilliant. Yeah, highly recommend that book and that work. So my work is, I guess, an evolution of that.
Can
We'll
we
see.
talk about spirituality?
Yes.
What that side of it? That's it's not something that I've heard someone does a PhD in it. So you're looking at leadership and spirituality. Can we talk on that?
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I'm so excited, because it's like the fusion of all of my life and my work. Like I remember reading, I don't know if you've read A Return to Love, Marianne Williamson, like way back when I was 21 and in that sort of chronic fatigue stage, and her book was sent to me, and this sort of this start of my spiritual journey, and what does that mean, and what does spirituality mean when it's not tied to religion, which has been my path. And like I look at spirituality as a deep connection within ourselves and a connection with something outside of ourselves. That's how I sort of frame up spirituality, and how all of this work around how do we be authentic as women, how do we reclaim and claim our power as women, and how do we do that in a very grounded, whole, connected sense, spirituality, and then how do we take that out into the world, leadership. And for me, when I look at so much of my journey, it's been put the spirituality in a box over here and put the leadership in a box over here, and all of that career work. And my work over the last kind of decade has been, how do we bring those things together so that we have this holistic picture of who we are, and then we take that out into the world. So this program that I'm doing is in California, and it's a top women's studies program with this lens of spirituality, and I'm bringing in the lens of leadership into that. So we'll see. It's going to be a journey.
It's going to be amazing.
We'll see where it leads. That's why I'm excited about it. Yeah.
It's an incredible cross, isn't it, guys? Because, spirituality, leadership, it's like saying meditation and corporate world, like they just seem such worlds apart. And yet, when you get to the crux, especially even in my world with the clients I work with, when you get to the real deep root reason for what they want, it's happiness.
Yeah.
It's happiness, it's energy, it's joy. And those things you can't actually quantify, measure really, or even say what it is in a box. It's all individual and unique. And yet happiness is at the core. At the core of all religion, it seems, in my humble opinion, is the essence of love. And it doesn't matter which lens you look through. It's about love thy neighbor, love oneself, love the planet, love the earth. So love and spirituality, it's almost like if I told a whole group of people, come to my workshop and learn how to make lots of money, you'd fill the room quicker than come to my workshop and learn how to love yourself and find happiness. Why are we so disconnected and yet so craving it?
Yes. Oh, I mean, if that's not the question of our time, right? And when we look at all the problems in the world, one of the questions that people feed back to me again and again that they love is this question that I ask around, what if love was the language of leadership instead of fear? What if love was the language of leadership instead of fear?
I just got covered in goosebumps.
Me too.
I mean, that.
Say it again. What if love?
What if love was the language of leadership instead of fear?
I love it.
And that is, like, I always ask that question because that for me is at the core of everything that I do and everything that I want for the world. Just imagine our politicians leading from a place of love, not from a place of fear. Imagine our corporate leaders, our community leaders. Like, that's just everything, right? And that to me brings together that sense of spirituality, however you define it. Love for self, love for others, and leadership.
But Megan, in all honesty, if you look at where we get lost in that, it comes back to money. So, money drives people's desire to be powerful, or they see it as a gauge, and again, generally speaking, but money is the gauge of success, not happiness. Money is what drives political campaigns. Money is what drives the health industry and all of these things.
Yeah.
So money is kind of like, we know it's not evil. We know it has an energy and an entity of its own. How are you going to bring the two together through your work, where we actually can see the two intertwined, where we do lead from love with the ability for everyone to have enough to survive, thrive, and be in this world?
Like, it's a value shift. It's a values shift, is what it for us as individuals, for our families, for our communities, for our teams, for the world. Like, it's a value shift. And part of the feminine rising, which we are seeing everywhere, is like they go together, right? We see the feminine rising, which is not just women rising. It's the feminine within us all rising, all genders. And with that comes a value shift. And, you know, like when we see leaders like Jacinda Ardern and the way that she led when she was in government, and, you know, her saying, I refuse to accept that I can't be both kind and empathetic and vulnerable and a strong leader. That's what I'm talking about. When we see Sam Mostyn get sworn in as the Governor General this week, and she says, what we need is more kindness, that's a values shift. That's what I'm talking about, right? Like, I see it everywhere. Once you start looking for where are people leading with love rather than fear, you will start to see it everywhere. When you look for where is the feminine rising in our male leaders, yeah, as much as in our, you know, women at the community centre and the mothers group, you start to see it everywhere. And I think we have to shift this dial. We've got to shift the lens. We need to start amplifying, which is, again, why Jacinda Ardern was such a powerful role model for all leaders, not just for women. We have to start amplifying the positive change that we're seeing. You know, it's the science of appreciative inquiry, change model.
Can I just interrupt you though, Megan?
Yeah.
Like, love Jacinda Ardern and the way she was seen in that way.
Yeah.
But talk to any business person and they found her leadership incredibly discouraging, because they felt, and again, this is just feedback I've had over in New Zealand, whilst people loved her, they also felt she didn't have an understanding of running a business, the country like a business. Now, I'm not saying that's my beliefs or not beliefs, but I'm just interested to know that, you know, with the rising of the feminine kindness, there seems to be a bit of a pushback with how do you do that and yet still keep a country buoyant or a home financially viable, or that we're actually all achieving in a financially successful way as well? Or am I off track?
Yeah, look, I can't comment on New Zealand government and business and what happened under her reign. I'm just talking about from what we're seeing in terms of leadership and different models of leadership. You know, you will absolutely see, if you look at different business leaders, we see this in the entrepreneurial space all the time, right? There are the hustle and grind and push and drive businesses, and they can be really successful. And you can also have businesses that are led more with heart and this balance of feminine and masculine traits, like mine and like many, many others, that are absolutely thriving and scaling and growing. So again, I think it's a shift in the paradigm and a shift in the conversation that you can have both. Like, where are those examples? The book, The Athena Doctrine, is a great book for anyone who's interested in this exact conversation. Shift in society, shift in values, shift in leadership, what happens in governments, what happens in businesses when you have leaders who lead with this mix of feminine and masculine traits. Heaps of examples in there, from, you know, companies to countries to communities. So, like, again, it's an and for me. Yeah, not a has to be one or the other. It's a where is it both, and where is it working, and how do we replicate and amplify that change. Yeah.
I find in crisis, so it's all going along smoothly, everything's great, we can lead with love as opposed to fear. But the minute there's a crisis, I find not only myself, but our leaders.
She flaps, Megan, like panic flaps. She just, there's not real leadership when she's in crisis. I'm just saying.
And it's usually around my kids. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about our leaders.
The most highly intelligent woman I've ever met becomes quite different under extreme crisis, which is actually quite beautiful, by the way. I'm not knocking it.
But I have to tell you, I have a husband who is incredible under crisis. So he tells me what to do. I obey.
Yes.
As long as I'm busy, I'm fine. But this is what I'm explaining, is that it's all well and good until a crisis comes. And then the fear rises. Like, look at what's just happened through COVID. The amount of fear that was brought out by our health authorities in leadership, by our government in leadership, by our police force in leadership. And I go, here I am asking you this question, but I can't even cope with it myself. When in crisis, how do you maintain that leadership of love and not that leadership of fear?
It's really interesting that you bring up the pandemic, because if you really go and look at all of the data and research of what actually happened in the pandemic and which countries and which leaders of which countries and how they led, there's been a lot of discussion and data that the countries that were led by females, by women who led in a certain way, had better outcomes in the pandemic. Now you'd have to just go Google that, go around the leadership study. So I know exactly what you're saying, because often when we go into a fear state, we can revert to type, we can revert to, very certain ways of doing things. We're trying to stave off. But the pandemic was a really interesting case study for that, So again, I don't. There's not one answer. There's not one answer. For leaders, it comes down to, I believe, what are my values? What is the impact that I want to have? How do I want to show up? And what's most important? And that two things can exist at once. We can have a focus on profit and have a focus on people. I truly believe that.
Yep.
And this is, again, part of the shift in the paradigm, that doesn't need to be black and white and all or nothing. It can be both things.
But also what you're saying here, leadership, and back to what you said at the very beginning, leadership is as a mum, as a woman, as an independent, as an employee. It's not just about being a leader of a CEO of a company, because when I look at that, and I'm just thinking, one day I just remember my son running across the park to me and going, "Mum, Taylor's fallen out of the tree and she's not moving." And I remember going, but my values were, everything will be all right, stay calm. Yeah. My impact, I didn't want to freak my kids out, so I had to stay in that space of calmness. How to show up as a leader in a crisis, so I stayed calm. What's most important? That my daughter feels safe and secure, and my son's witnessing how I behave around that. And that two things can exist at once. Well, what came up for me then was, inside I was a panicking, freaking 2-year-old wanting to throw a tantrum. But externally, I was expressing this from an external consideration of the impact of this. And everything was okay. I understand not always it's that. But isn't that interesting, as you said that
leadership.
First thing came up? Yeah, leadership.
Leadership. That's leadership.
So it's across
leading yourself, leading your family. It's all leadership. Yeah. Such a beautiful example.
Oh, yeah, touch me.
But I'm the one on the other side. My internal comes out and I'd be like, "Rah!"
She's got better, Megan. She's got way better. She's become an incredible, she'll just ring me and go, "Can't breathe." And then I go, "Take a deep breath."
Yeah. And that's out. Take a deep breath.
That's when you come back to breath.
Yes, always.
Back to breath. And where we started from, wasn't it? Where we started from.
Yeah.
Now, Megan, where can we find you? I want that free resource. I would love it, the Possibility Planner. How do we find that? Where do we follow you? You just, to me, I've so enjoyed this hour. I have learned so much from you. And the fact that we have an incredible women leader leading with love, with Women Rising, is just an inspiration.
Thank you. I've loved our conversation too. So far reaching and all the big questions. So megandallacamina.com is where I live. I'm at Megan Dalla Camina on all socials.
Just spell that for everybody.
Yes. MEGANDALLACAMINA, Megan Dalla Camina. And womenrisingco.com. So there's heaps of free resources up on womenrisingco.com, like the Possibility Planner. It's also a resource for confidence, Male Allies Guide, a whole lot of more career things. And then megandallacamina.com. I do a Sunday note of encouragement. It's a really beautiful, brief little love note from me on a Sunday that people can go and grab. Everything. So much of what I do is free, just for community support. So yeah, love to connect with people.
I just want to say before we finish is, I was just nominated as a finalist as a business for micro small business, which is such an honor and a privilege. And this morning I answered 3 questions that had to come up in there, and I really thought so hard about whether or not to put it in there. But my business is all about self-care and self-love. And I too do love notes and offer inspiration and free things and all of those wonderful things. And isn't it interesting, in my filling out of this form this morning, I was afraid to put down because I felt like self-care and self-love wasn't enough. And yet it's the core of who I am. And the way I don't have a PhD, I'm not a university graduate, but I do want to lead from the heart. And I know Cindy does as well. It's our passion comes through before the importance of what we're telling you. Our connection to you is more important than the facts we share. And when one of my mentors many years ago said, you've got to fill their hearts before their heads, that just totally connected with me. And so I'll be interested to see, from a position of being a finalist, if self-love and self-care is actually as important as the 3 of us think it is. And I truly believe it's one of the most important, most unbelievable superpowers any one of us, men and women, can possess, is the power of self-love.
Yes. I love that you put that down. And if it gives you any sort of heart and hope, we won the Telstra Business Award this year for Accelerating Women.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. And I don't love awards. I've never gone in for awards, but I thought my team was like, this could really amplify the movement and the reach and the support for women. And I was like, okay, well, if we're going to do this, I'm going to do it truly authentically. And our whole application, yes, we had the numbers and they really drill into it, but it was all about that. It was all about love over fear in terms of leadership and taking care of yourself and holistic practices and how I run my team and, through, love and all of the things. So, and we won. So I think there is this shift. Like, I really am so hopeful that this shift is here, and that I'm so pleased that you did that for you and that you honored yourself and your beautiful work. Yeah.
Well, I like you. Actually, the process was more important to me than the outcome. It was beautiful to ask the questions and to check back in and to really follow where I was going. And it was a beautiful space and place to actually observe all of that. But to answer that question, honestly, it took an hour. And there are only 3 50-word questions. But I sat there going, is that enough? Is that enough? And yet, if I see people filled with love and they believe in themselves, they're going to eat the right things. They're going to respect themselves. They're going to move their body. To me, it's the foundation of all things: relationships, business, finance, leadership, women, men. Like, I think you have just totally cemented for me, because I was questioning it this morning. I'll be completely honest with both of you. I was questioning it, going, this isn't enough. But I've always felt it was enough. But that was a funny perception, wasn't it?
I love that. I just love
and you've had confirmation here.
Thank
It was right.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you both.
Yeah.
I so value you both and the work that you're doing in the world, and I've just loved every second of this conversation. So thank you. I've got goosebumps now.
You're amazing. Thank you for being a beautiful leader with love and heart and passion and determination to help us have that values shift so that we can move together, not separate. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.